Water security is about making sure that people have enough water to meet their needs, that it's available when and where they need it. And what we find is that with climate change, it's actually changing patterns of water, of where it is and when it is throughout the year. In rural areas of Ethiopia, we found that people have particular challenges because the rural water supply systems are not always working very well. They're also affected by flood, drought, and water quality issues as well. Decision makers who are quite distant from the community don't always understand the challenges that communities are facing on the ground. So what we really wanted to do with this project was to try and address that and bring some of the voices of local people into the decision-making processes.
In 2018, I traveled with Catherine to Fentale in rural Ethiopia to document her research on water security and climate change. And in particular, I was interested in taking images that captured the diversity of ways people were experiencing flood, drought, and water quality issues. Photography is an incredibly powerful tool to communicate various issues because it really taps into the emotions. Our brains are wired to understand visual information much quicker than other type of information. So it helps us understand, but it also helps us remember. Typical photos we see in the humanitarian sector in international development are people being portrayed in very difficult situation, be it conflicts, poverty, and that can lock people into this idea that they're victims, that they're not the decision makers of their own lives.
Who are the photographers? Who are the storytellers? Whose stories are we telling? And there's always the gap of understanding the community. It's one thing to want to highlight these stories, but it's another to make sure the community's voice is heard directly.
Participatory photography is a really interesting method for addressing this issue. By giving a camera to community members, they are more likely to document the exact issues that they're facing. They understand their own issues, and there's more time, there's access to more places, so you will get a wider diversity of images. The project consisted in first selecting the participant, and we were really pleased to have an equal number of men and women. Martha trained them to use the phone cameras. They were then sent to take images, and then Martha came back to them and consulted with them, and together with the participants they selected images that they thought were more representative of their own issues. Once those images were selected, they were printed and exhibited at an event in the local community with decision makers from the area.
You feel that sense of ownership where you've provided the platform to tell your own story on your own language, on your own way, on your own rule.
The stakeholders couldn't really understand why rural communities were not using the new water systems that they'd put in. And it turned out that there were a lot of problems with the design of the projects and the technology that had been used. It fostered a dialogue between the stakeholders and the community. So one of the things that came out of it was a greater understanding of which stakeholders are actually responsible for making decisions about their water security, about who's responsible and who has the power to make change.
Participants were so happy. It was so beautiful to see them at the photo exhibition, explaining their work, explaining what they have brought to the stakeholders, to different individuals that took part at that event. And I could see that sense of ownership. I could see the pride in being able to share the challenges directly, which doesn't always happen. It's these images that we see that are also calling for action. It was a wonderful collaborative effort, and most importantly, my hands were not there, my camera lens were not there.
We realized that they live very difficult, busy lives, and they've given a lot of their own time. And they probably have high expectations about what's going to happen next. Is it going to actually lead to improvements in their lives? And that, unfortunately, we can't tell. What we can tell is that the decision makers say that they gain better understanding,
Not only has this project answered some questions, but it's also raised some questions for me as well. And I'm really excited to see how this project can inform future research.